In the world we inhabit today, it's frenetic, it's full on. You're working in an environment here where you've got people talking, you've got phones, you've got email, you've got internet, you've got a whole variety of things here. And if you're in business or in working life, it's very, very difficult to stay focused and not to get distracted. And tonight's show with me and my good friend, Dr. Joe, is about focus and distraction, or fads, if you want a mnemonic there. Not only what they are, why they're bad for business, but also we're going to give you some practical steps about how you can avoid that. So settle down, grab some popcorn. At this time of night, you can grab yourself a glass of wine. If you're listening from overseas, then obviously have something non-alcoholic, and we wouldn't recommend that you are in the workplace and drinking as well. We'll be back, but until then, let's get a bit of music to get that old circulation going. And as I say, we're back in the room. Joe, good evening.
Oh, what a great intro that was. That was fantastic.
Thank you.
So, yeah, focus and distractions. And there are lots of distractions, aren't there?
100%, yeah.
Yeah, so many. And in fact, research shows that at least 50% of the distractions are from inside ourselves. There was a guy called Hugo Gernsback.
Oh, I love that name.
It's great, isn't it? And you'll like this story.
Okay.
Back in that, he wanted to do more work, wanted to be more productive, but he was just getting distracted all the time. So in 1925, he invented something called the isolator, which is a helmet, a tall helmet with two eye holes, like round eye holes, made of like some quite chunky. It looks like it's made of metal to me when I look at the old pictures. And sort of a breathing tube coming in, but that was all there was this big coming right down to the bottom of your neck. So the isolator, and you thought if you wear the isolator, then you'll be free from distractions. But unfortunately, what he found, which was to be demonstrated to be, a reasonable thing years later with proper research, is that he still was distracted because most of the distraction was coming from inside his own head.
Fantastic. What was it? What did he conclude in terms of, we're going to explore this later on. I will just say, folks, by the way, me and Joe don't actually know what each other is going to say. We tried this a few weeks ago when we relaunched the new series here. And we obviously have a chat about what the topic area is, but I have got no idea what Joe's going to say. And she's got no idea what I'm going to say. And it seems to be working pretty well. So tell me, Joe, what was the drivers behind that internal distraction?
It was just other things popping in, into his head, from even, feeling hungry through to something else he'd rather be thinking about, or when he got bored, it was just all sorts of things like, what am I going to have for dinner, and what do I need to do next? All that conversation with that person. So quite a wide variety of stuff, and I think it's just how the brain works. The brain needs to be aware of what's going on, around us. So focus actually comes from within. We all, and this is pre-social media, pre-scrolling. I mean, you can imagine poor Hugo if in the age of social media, because scrolling would have been an additional distraction for him. But so it's, it goes back over time, and a lot of it is within ourselves.
I mean, that's fascinating, not just for the conclusion here, but I think when I was doing some prep and research for the show tonight, when we've talked about it before, I think most people's default reaction, they'll just go, internet, social media, and all the rest of it. Yeah. And certainly that is an influence. You can't distract from that. But actually, you're dead right. It is actually ourselves. And I think if we look in terms of how we behave, it's hardwired, and we have to go back thousands and thousands of years here, where the human brain has evolved to conserve energy. The human brain is more focused on the present. And by the present, I mean like the short term, what's going on right now, as opposed to thinking far ahead. And I think we need to take those on board. I think the internet age that we live in adds to that, but I don't think, I think it would be wrong to say that it's all down to, what's happened in the last 10, 15 years.
Yeah. I mean, distraction is all around us. There's lots more information and entertainment and available to us at our fingertips. I think with the internet and Netflix and all of those things. But it's really important. Now there are things we can do about that. We'll come on to that later on in the show. And sometimes I think, I don't know what you think about this. I might be wrong, but I think sometimes where there is an external distraction, something happens like there's a customer issue or something needs sorting out straight away in the business and all of those things. Sometimes I think people actually prefer doing those things than doing the thing they would like to be doing, which is planning for the long term, because it feels busy and productive. It feels like we're needed. We can see the immediate result. Whereas, as you said, we're not great at planning ahead and doing the things today that are going to reward us tomorrow. So I think sometimes we like to hop here, there, and everywhere and do this, that, and the other because it makes us feel needed, productive, and busy and important even.
I think on that point as well, I fully agree with that, and I think it's that long term we find it's next to, it's very difficult for human beings to actually say at some point in the future I'm going to get a reward, and therefore I'm going to put in all this energy and application and focus here. Short-term wins are always more gratifying, and they psychologically, physiologically, they're better for us because they conserve less energy. We get those better rewards here. There are techniques you can do to mitigate that. You talk about stats, by the way. When I was reading an article by Alexandra Barufti, if I pronounce their name correctly, and there's a few things here that was quite intriguing. Companies apparently lose out substantial profit and about on average 720 hours a year per person working from distractions. They're saying that 98% of the workforce said they're interrupted at least 3 or 4 times a day, which is quite a lot. 84.4% of people think they're distracted at work. And it takes 23 minutes and 15 seconds, apparently, to fully recover focus after a distraction.
Yeah. And there's that sort of connects in with research around multitasking as well. So the research shows we can't actually multitask. We just toggle. We do micro toggles from one thing to another, and overall it slows us down. So it is interesting, isn't it, that the unproductivity or lack of productivity that distraction causes is bigger than we think. And a bit of distraction can be a good thing, can't it?
I think it was on last week's show, actually. We talked about that. Or last week or the week before. We talked about actually sometimes you need that free fall. Your brain just needs to go on a walkabout and a wander here to allow itself to be creative. I know that's your domain or your area, but you're right. Distractions are good because it allows us some sort of openness in terms of the way our minds can cogitate and think.
Yeah, but I think it's about recognizing when we need that and creating it rather than that invading us when we're trying to focus and do something that is important to us that we want to get done. So the distraction, if we use it strategically and in a planned way, or in a way where we're thinking it through and we're saying, okay, I need to take a break now, I need to go now, I need to do something else so I can be more productive, is different from just trying to get something done and looking at the ping here because an email's come in and seeing what the dog's doing in the garden, and all of those human things that we do. So there's a great book actually by Cal Newport called Deep Work, and it's one of my favorite books. And I actually, when I first read it, I mind mapped it because it was so rich about we're in a society where we're valuing the soundbite, where we're just consuming content. We're just grabbing the headline from the content and the 6-step process and the
3 ways to do it.
Tagline and the clever phrasing and all of those things. But we're not getting underneath it. We're not diving into more deeply into some of these topics and thinking more deeply about our businesses, where we want to go and the vision that we've got for that next big win.
I mean, it's interesting that. I mean, in terms of we're going to give people practical solutions about how to cope with these things here. But I've actually seen that. So if I put on my teaching hat, for about 30 years, I used to teach a lot of professional students about, for some reason, people who want to become accountants. And I've noticed there's a drift and a tendency in education that the teaching is directed more towards how to get through and pass an exam, as opposed to actually understanding that body of knowledge that's required to synthesize. So therefore, that objective for a lot of teaching institutions, not just professional exams, is geared towards an output, an outcome. And it's thinking the shortcut way to do that is how you pass an exams. And therefore, you lose some of those reasoning skills, you lose some of those synthesis skills, you lose some of those skills to actually sort of, look at something more deeply as well. And I think where I would say the internet age has raised its ugly head is I think people are becoming lazier in their thinking and their process and application about writing things down, trying to understand an argument and looking for quick, easy solutions to something without, diving deeper.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's like, and as well as understanding, which is so important, that's, it's about reflecting and taking time to think so that we can be creative, or so that we can think critically and more deeply about the decisions that we're making. It's still not, we don't have to take forever.
Yeah, for sure.
But just being less reactive and less relying on that intuition in the moment, and actually sort of just taking stock from time to time and reflecting and before moving on. So I think it's really important to do that. And there are so many distractions, and one of the ways, of course, which has been demonstrated over and over again to help with focus is meditation. And that there are plenty of good quality research studies now that show that a daily practice of meditation using something like Headspace or whatever, if people are new to it, really, really does help with distraction during the day, and it helps make deep work, deep focus more accessible. And it's something we can all do for free in 10 minutes a day.
I fully agree. I would say, personally speaking, I was a state invested interest. For the last 3 or 4 months, I started getting back into the meditation practice. So every morning when I wake up for 5-10 minutes in the day, it's literally sitting still and trying to, there's the various techniques you can do. And it's a great way to kickstart that thought process. And it's really difficult to begin with because you're trying to isolate and cut yourself out from everything else there as well. And when you can have that focus, it's a very therapeutic practice as well.
It is. And I've noticed, actually, I mean, I'm not an expert in this field, so I'm not a meditation guru or anything by any stretch.
Not yet.
But just something I've noticed is that after I've exercised, so it could be going for a walk or yoga or something, a bit more vigorous, meditation is easier for me after exercise. It's almost like I've moved. Oh, yeah. I've expended some energy, and if I meditate straight away, it feels great. And the whole package of that exercise plus 10 minutes meditation, it feels really, really good. And my productivity, I haven't measured it. I mean, but my sense is that it's significantly improved for a good few hours after that.
Yeah, I can see what that would be, because I would imagine the exercise and the yoga, and I didn't realize you're a yoga practitioner, by the way, because Joe, so I'll hold my hands up to that one as well, is that you're starting to actually focus on a particular singular thing there as well. So I can imagine how much easier it would be to continue into a practice of meditation as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are other things like Mikai Csikszentmihalyi, who's a real, a genuine, guru in the field of creativity and how the mind works. He, the expression flow, he's the godfather of flow. And to get into flow, which is that space where it feels that time stands still and we're just into what we're doing. We haven't got any perception of time. We're just, it's wonderful, isn't it? When you have those, you're working on something, and it just
I'm gonna
you're just into it, and you've no idea what time it is. You don't care. You don't want to stop. You're just into what you're doing. And the way he says that we need to do that is to have a high level of challenge and match it with a high level of skill requirement, and make sure our skill requirement meets the challenge. So if we've got a challenge which is too easy, we get bored, and that's when distraction creeps in. If the challenge is beyond our skill, then we get anxious and frustrated, and that's when distraction creeps in. So it's and if you've got something to do which is really boring and really easy, he says, build in some stretch, gamify it. He doesn't use the word gamify, that's me, but gamify it, so that you're having to raise your skill level to the challenge and get the two to meet nicely.
I mean, that's an excellent approach. That's an approach also used when people come to set targets for themselves as well. When targets are far too easy, then people tend to become as demotivated with easy targets. When things are next to impossible to achieve, again, that's another demotivator. This is the idea of why should I bother? So you need something that stretches you, takes you slightly outside of that reach here, but makes you aspire to that. Now, before we'll have a little game with you in a moment of distraction ping pong tennis as such, before we come up with some meaningful solutions as such. Folks, listen, if you experience that yourself, by the way, in your work, in your business life, you're aspiring to something, you find that you get distracted, what are the things that distract you the most? And have you got any tips you can share with us and our listeners in terms of how you get around that? Put your comments in the comment box. We put them up already. I think the magic phrase #replay will go a great way. So we've mentioned some of them in passing as well. So mention a distraction, okay, and let's see if we can come up with a list between ourselves of the more common distractions that we're likely to find in our business lives and our working lives. And I'll start with you. No, you're not distracted by that. I'm saying you'll start the first one.
Oh, okay. Yes, I can be a distraction. I think I can be quite disruptive, not intentionally so. So, I mean, the obvious ones are social media, pings, alerts coming in, emails, that sort of thing.
Okay. I would probably say then your co-workers.
Yeah, and alongside that, just interruptions, people wanting to take you away from what you're doing and go with them to do. So that's co-workers, isn't it, I suppose?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I would say then if we could add that, phone calls.
Yeah. Although less so. Maybe.
That's true, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you find that people ring you less?
I'll tell you what they're doing now. There's a tendency for some clients of mine, which I try and get them to avoid, is the methods of how they try and get hold of me are many and varied there. So I personally speaking prefer email, where they get a huge volume of them, but they contact me or try to contact me on WhatsApp, Messenger, and all the rest of it. So if you count that as a phone call or texting, then I would say that's quite active. WhatsApp is quite a productive, not a productive way, quite a popular way people now use to reach out to you.
Yeah, there are some clients, which is great, but I have conversations with entirely on LinkedIn Messenger. Different people on different platforms. So I suppose that in itself is a distraction, isn't it? Keeping up with all of that. I think sort of the latest news. I suppose it's another ping, isn't it? But
yeah.
I think I had a ping in on my watch earlier today, saying something about interest rates and 5%. We seem to have to be alerted whenever something happens in the news, whereas we used to wait till 10 o'clock or 6 o'clock or whichever news program we wanted to watch and, consolidate it all into that slot.
Yeah, I think we can also get distracted by external factors. So whether it's weather, the environment in which we, in terms of, so I know it's quite warm where you are. So obviously they're quite unusual for the north to get some sunshine, he said. My apologies to anyone in the north, by the way. That was meant as a tongue-in-cheek comment there as well.
Yeah, we have had some lovely sunshine in the northeast of England for the last couple of weeks. It's been glorious, but actually the good weather is a distraction.
Oh, 100%.
And the crappy weather is a distraction because we've had some thunderstorms that's knocked the Wi-Fi off, and nobody's had any Wi-Fi in certain areas and that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's those sorts of things, and I don't know, just worrying. I think worrying about stuff, Mahmood, is a distraction. When you've got something on your mind, you've had a difficult conversation with an employee or a colleague, or you might be worried about your cash flow, or you've got a big presentation coming up, or you're not sure how a client's going to react. All of those things are distractions as well, aren't they?
100%. I think let's go for one more. I'm going to mention one more, and then let's give people out there some solutions about ways to cope with this. I think also, I think you alluded to it initially, internal distractions as well. So, for example, if you're feeling tired, if you haven't eaten, your tummy's rumbling, or your pattern of life is such that it's quite inconsistent. So you're not getting regular sleep, you're not eating when you should be eating, you haven't drunk a glass of water recently, so you're not getting a full intake of water. And you're right, your mind can get overloaded. You've got a good idea as well, by the way. So if you're, I know you are like an idea generator, and you get ideas, and they can occupy a lot of your thought process here, and that can be distracting in itself as well. So there's loads of things outside of our control, lots of things in our control, and I think what would be great, we can move towards what do we tell people about solutions about how to cope with them.
Yeah. So I think an obvious one, just because it's obvious, mine doesn't mean that we do it, and I certainly don't always do it, and I could be better. But when I do it, it works. Is to turn off the alerts and say, right, I'm going to check my email, social, whatever it is, at this time in the morning, this time at lunchtime, and this time in the afternoon. I'm going to 2-3 times a day maximum at certain times, and then other than that, I'm going to leave it alone. And if people want to contact me urgently, then they can ring me, or whatever method you prefer. Have an emergency sort of access line. But I think that's a good one to start off with.
Yeah, I like that one. I'm going to give you one as well. Is that, and I think just as an only point, something I've tried to do more recently with emails, I tend not to respond to them, look at them straight away first thing in the morning, for example, because that can actually influence how the rest of your day is going to unfold there as well. So other people are setting the agenda for you, not the other way around. Obviously, you talk about pings, turning off notifications on your phone, email, Mr. Bill Gates' stuff, and all the rest of it. I would probably say, I would actually look at reframing how you look at things and what you're doing there. So I know we all use terms like boring, tedious, hard work here, and I think if you can reframe what you're doing, those going towards meeting a good positive outcome and objective, and actually seeing those steps as something productive, something that's positive, and we don't have that negativity that surrounds the description of those tasks as well, I think that goes some way to minimizing the distractions as well.
Yeah, and to build on that is breaking big things down into really small chunks. So if they're not your favorite things to do, then make them as small as possible and do smaller chunks more frequently, rather than have to sit down and do a lot. There's a lot to be said for batching things, but if batching things, you find that hard work, then break it down into smaller chunks. I think another tip from me is to be present with what you're doing. So I used to, because I've always got a million things, to do. I think everybody's always got a million things they could be doing other than what they're doing right now. And it's very human to think about the things we could and should be doing rather than what we're doing right here, right now. So I've learned to go, okay, well, all that's still there. I can't do that while I'm doing this. I'm doing this right now. So that's what I'm going to focus on. And the rest of the stuff can wait. And I know when I'm, broadly when I'm going to tackle the rest of the stuff. So that's okay. So that means I'm more productive in the things I'm doing. I'm not constantly going, thinking about the other things and slowing down the thing I'm supposed to be doing at the moment, if that makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense, actually. I think it's a very sensible way of looking at it. So that's some great tips and solutions there. I think that connectivity and actually looking after yourself properly. I'm rubbish at taking advice that I give to other people here, but I'm trying to take it on board more. But I think definitely that reconnection with nature, being present at the moment. So that means, like, whether it's going for a walk, nobody's talking about a 10-mile hike or anything, going out for a walk, reconnect with nature, just going away from your normal place of work and environment here is a great way to re-energize. Sleep properly, get some decent sleep, and drink water. I think those are really great, very easy to do, but difficult to form habits over, things that you can do as also to make you more productive, I think, and more energetic.
Yeah, and if worries are distracting you, I suggest sitting down and writing, journaling or writing down or making some notes about your worries, or finding somebody to say it all out loud to, so that you can get it all out there and then create a plan that you can move forward with. It gives you some perspective. So if something is really worrying you, just take some time out, address it if you can, and if it's something that may or may not happen, if it's something that you can't control, then it's about switching your focus and disrupting that. Change position, do something physical, move, change task, go somewhere different, and disrupt yourself until you get so focused on something else that worry has subsided. So
Yeah.
yeah, if it's a genuine thing, create a plan. If it's a who knows, it may or may not happen some point in the future, then disrupt and move to something else.
I think an extension of that as well, I think it's that phraseology is that you can't necessarily control what goes on around and influences your world, but you can certainly change your reaction to it. And I think it's
Yeah.
really critical if there is something stressing you out and worrying you. Uh, Two things. First of all, don't internalize it and bottle it up and just keep it to yourself. So whether you do it by journaling or talk to somebody that that you can just, explain what your position is, relay that can be quite cathartic as well. But yeah, bottling it up and just thinking you're going to resolve it, your brain is a useless mechanism for trying to solve problems there as well.
Yeah, definitely. Couldn't agree more about sleep. Sleep gives you perspective, energy, better for decision making, clarity, greater productivity. It really is the foundation. So great sleep is so important.
Yeah, and I found, isn't it, that I mean, apart from being bad for your health anyway, a lack of good quality REM sleep there will impact your decision making. You're more likely to make mistakes. You're more likely to get more stressed out. It's not going to be very good physiologically speaking there as well.
Yeah.
What's the normal recommended amount? Typically about 6 to 8 hours, is it?
Yeah, I think it depends on sort of age and those sorts of things. I think it changes. It probably gets a little bit less as we age. So different phases of life, but yeah, about 6 to 8 hours, and everybody's different as well. There's
Yeah.
some genetic differences as well.
So, Joe, what's your final one?
Final one, I think. I think it is about meditation and being, disciplined to find 5 or 10 minutes. The Dalai Lama is attributed. Well, this is attributed to him. Said that if you can't find, time, if you can't find 10 minutes to meditate, or if you can't find 20 minutes to meditate, then you need to meditate for 2 hours. If you really genuinely can't find 10 minutes, it means that actually you need to find a lot longer, because you're stacked and you're overwhelmed. So yeah, taking that time. And there are two sorts of meditation. There's sort of a divergent meditation where you actually close your eyes and you let those different thoughts come in. You just, you open your mind to it all, and you just let them go and notice them and just let them come in and go. And then there's a more focused convergent meditation where you might want to focus on the breath or a flame of a candle or something like that. And the thoughts are still coming in, but you're staying focused and just noticing them and let them go, so you can stay focused. The first one's great for creativity, and the second one is great for focus. Yeah.
What's your preference? Which one do you tend to practice on more often?
It depends what I'm going to do. So if I'm going to, if I'm stuck for ideas on something that I know I'm going to be working on, I'll go for the first one. And if I need to knuckle down and, really get into something, I'll go for the second.
Okay. I think as a tip, I tend to do this second one more often, by the way. I would say a tip to share is I love this idea of eating the frog here. So nobody likes the idea of eating a frog. So the story goes. I think it's Brian Tracy who first came up with that. So therefore, the task that you, in your own mind, you don't see as very enriching, or you know they've got to be done, but you don't enjoy them, do them first thing, or at a time frame that's best for you. And I do that. I know lots of other people do that. get that task done. That sense of accomplishment of having done something and completing it is really great, and it's a great motivator, for going on as well.
It is. It is. I've been trying to exercise really early in the morning, like 4:30, around about 4:30, 5 o'clock, something like that, and it works really well. And then when I get out of sync with that, and I need to travel, or there's some disruption to that, and I'm needing to do it in the evening, still gets done, but I don't think it gets done as well. And it doesn't feel like it's setting me up
You're a bit
as well for the
disjointed,
day.
yeah.
So things that are important to you, and those 45 minutes are probably the most, apart from the sleep, are probably the most important things I can do for myself that day. So I find when I need to work harder on prioritizing that and getting it done in the morning, because it feels great. I enjoy it, but it feels so much better doing it early on.
Yeah, I can see that. Look, listen, folks. So, what do you think of this? Okay, so what do you have particular tips and techniques that you adopt? How do you minimize distraction? How do you get more focus? Do you think it's all hooey? Do you not bother? You just let it go, roll with the punches? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Do please check out the Next Big Win website. We've got a fantastic quiz. Joe is excellent at explaining it. Joe, tell everybody about what the quiz is that they're going to encounter on the nextbigwin.co.uk.
Yeah, so it's a couple of quick minutes, doesn't take very long. Answer some questions and you will find out what sort of entrepreneur you have the preference of being and what that means for your next big win. And as a result of that, we give you some tips for how you can get there better with less risk and faster.
Superb. So, folks, enjoy the weekend. Make sure you don't get sunburnt, so be careful of that hot weather. It's lovely. Enjoy it. If you're not somebody who does like the sun, then obviously stay cool, stay sanguine, and we'll see you folks next week.
See you then. Bye.
Bye. And let's lay out with this wonderful heart-stopping music.